Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we're looking at a brand new VAYLANTZ trap card, kinda out of nowhere. Wasn't really expecting this one much, to be honest, for Duelist Nexus at least. We've already kind of come and gone with like the main, what we thought was going to be like the main follow-up support for VAYLANTZ. If you don't know, normally, especially with deck build packs, they will come out, and then in the next core set, they'll get 1 or 2 cards, and then the next core set, they'll get 1 or 2 cards, and then usually Konami backs off for a while. They've been in the pattern where they'll do that, and then they'll back off for another 2 to 3 years, and then maybe they'll come back to it then if they feel like the archetype needs a little something to keep it relevant enough in the current state of the game. We already got a solo activation. This card was amazing. This was almost like the perfect engine card they were looking for as far as a spell goes. This card was hit the nail right on the head in I believe this was Darkwing Blast. Yeah, so that was the first core set after the deck build pack got released. Then we got Chronochasm in Photon Hypernova. This card's also kind of nice for them. It's pretty easy enough for them to make, and it is just kind of like a walking Trident. So easy to make walking Tridents, pretty dang good. So let's take a look at the trap card and see how it follows up on VAYLANTZ's stuff. This is VAYLANTZ Wave Master Phase, a continuous trap card. Once per turn, if a card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, you can activate one of these effects. First effect, all level 5 or higher VAYLANTZ monsters you control currently control gain 1200 attack until the end of this turn. Okay, not super relevant. I guess it could help you kill your opponent, but on a later turn, but not that relevant. The other effect, send this face-up card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard, then target one effect monster in your opponent's main monster zone, place that opponent's monster face up as a continuous spell in their spell and trap zone in the same column. If the zone is occupied, you just destroy the occupying card. Okay, so that second effect is definitely the better effect of the two, and I like that this comes in the form of a trap card, because I always like decks that have varied interruption. We saw this with Tearlament and a couple of other decks recently where, Tear would end with like a back row Solic. It would end with monsters on field that threaten the opponent, a Rule Kalos or, something else. And then it would end with interruptions in grave and interruptions in hand. So it made it very hard to counter all the interruptions with board breakers. And this, kind of helps with that, right? Like, mostly VAYLANTZ boards and just being big scary threats on the field, but having this in the back row does give you a little bit of varied interaction, but only to a certain degree, because unfortunately I think there's two main things that I don't love about this card. One, the fact that you have to send this card to the graveyard, so it's a 1-for-1 pretty much thing. Like the 1200 attack is not that relevant, but like the interaction is a fine interaction effect. But the problem is you have to send this card to the graveyard, and so it's a one-time thing. You use it once and then it's gone. I felt like this could have maybe been a card that just every turn you move a zone, target a monster your opponent controls and mess with it, because that would have helped this deck maybe have more of a mid-range possibility to play that way instead of being a heavier combo deck like it has been. I mean, it's had its own FTK already. So yeah, that's kind of one of the downsides for me, is that this doesn't help in the grind game. And secondly is the first part. The fact that this is not an ignition effect, it's a trigger effect. It has to be triggered by moving columns already. I don't love that either. Looking at Chronochasm, I think he might be the only, correct me if I'm wrong, he might be the only VAYLANTZ monster that moves columns as a quick effect. And so what that means is it presents two really awkward things. One, you're not always going to interact the way you want. I mean, for example, if your opponent normal summons Fallen of Albaz and discards a card to use its effect, and they're going second and they're trying to just rip your Chronochasm off the field, you can use your Chronochasm effect to change columns, but that means your trap won't trigger till the next turn, which means they will already have ripped your Chronochasm off the field, and Chronochasm will be off the field anyway, so he won't be able to use his pop effect either. So it makes it so you get like a very subpar interaction with you know, with that, with the way that things are resolved and the fact that these have to trigger in the next chain, which is very awkward. And the other thing would be you just don't interact with certain cards really well, because now that probably some of your boards, if you go routes where you set up the trap, you'd have trap plus Chronochasm, which means you really struggle with particular spell cards more than anything. I mean, there's a couple of other ones, but like droplets, even imperm, just to start your opponent's turn. Like if your opponent just starts with imperm and goes imperm on the Chronochasm, so they have nothing committed to the field, so Chronochasm changing columns then doesn't do anything, because they don't have anything. So what are you going to pop? What are you going to remove monster wise? Same thing with droplet, just turn him off. Or even Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse, stuff like that. Because both interactions are reliant on Chronochasm, means one card could potentially shut down Chronochasm and turn off both interruptions at the same time, which you don't love. So those to me are the weaknesses. The interaction is fine, or the interruption is fine. I also don't love that it targets the monster. They could have definitely made this non-targeting if they wanted to. It's fine, but to me it's just like overall too reliant on a monster, whereas like the biggest benefit of this would have been getting an extra form of interruption that sits in the back row. But Dark Ruler is another one that turns off Chronochasm. Like a lot of these spell cards are going to turn off both your monsters and this card because of the way it works. So for me, it's kind of a swing and a miss. Not great. But to be fair, I don't even think VAYLANTZ really needed much. I still think they're a competent deck, and you know, it's a pendulum deck, so obviously pendulums always have that possibility to be combined with other engines and stuff for them, so that's, you know, not a huge deal. And plus these two cards that they got prior were hits. I mean, I thought they were really nice for the archetype, so didn't even necessarily need this. Anyway, so it's at least not one of those scenarios where you needed something and you missed. We didn't really need it, so missing is kind of a bummer, because like, why miss anything if you don't have to? But it is what it is. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on this card. Definitely like a subpar card to me. If I was a VAYLANTZ player, I probably wouldn't end up playing this, just because I don't think it's doing enough to warrant playing like an extra brick slot in the deck. But you know, feel free to let me know. I'm not a super qualified VAYLANTZ player, so if you are more well-versed in the deck, let me know your overall thoughts on this card. Do you think there's a place for it? Do you agree with me? Do you think it's just not enough to warrant playing it? Let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear those. But yeah, we should be continuing. Konami's trickling out small Duelist Nexus drops here and there. We'll see as we keep going, and I'll obviously keep you updated on anything that drops there. But I'm out of here for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me down the line, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.